What's going on, guys? It's your boy Scrub here, back again with another video, and today I've got some more scary stories. There will be a spookier gameplay next time, but for now, enjoy the Halloween Balloons Tower Defense map. I've been a technical diver for the better part of a decade. Something about the ocean and all its unexplored wonder has always drawn me to the deep. The entire uncharted, alien world lurks just beneath us, waiting to reveal its mysteries to those daring enough to take the plunge. I guess you could say that diving is my passion. It has been my entire adult life, and now I can't even bring myself to go to the deep end of a pool without having a panic attack. It all started when one of my buddies approached me with the idea of going on a little excursion. Todd had a fairly formidable boat that he carved out of a living by engaging in, let's just say, less than legal activities. Anyways, some reputable characters that Todd helped move cargo into the country had told him about a cave several miles off the coast of his own country. Truth be told, no matter how much time I spend on the background of how we found ourselves 100 feet below sea level, I'll still never understand why or how I agreed to such a misguided idea, and it hardly matters now. At 99 feet below sea level, the pressure on your body normally felt by the atmosphere is quadrupled. The sunlight feebly attempts in vain to penetrate the darkness. Darkness rules there, and creatures of the dark are all that inhabit it. I checked my depth and air pressure gauges and looked up to see Todd hand signaling me to follow him to the mouth of the cave. I flutter-kicked silently forward, floating just above the seaweed and silt-covered ocean floor, taking in as much of the world as my low-profile, narrow-lens mask would let me. When we reached the mouth of the cave, Todd dropped to the floor and clipped his line to a formation near the entrance. This was a very important step in cave diving. That line was our only way back out of the system. I held my light in his hands while he worked, but my gaze drifted back to the mouth of the cave. The darkness was just as oppressive as always, but there was something strange. I couldn't put my finger on it at the time. The ominous black maw was somehow more intense than it should be. Then I heard it. A low-pitched roar from out of the deep. A thunderous echo sounded from so far below it was a whisper by the time it reached us. That's the strange thing about hearing when you dive that far down. You don't just hear, you feel. You feel it in your chest, in your bones. The noise echoed through me and I felt my stomach drop. We hadn't come this far for nothing, though. We dutifully pressed on. Todd held the line and made the entrance first, and I followed behind. My hand trailed along the line as it unfurled. With graceful strokes, we kicked about 30 or 40 feet into the system before my light caught a silver glint out of the backdrop of darkness of neutral-toned rock formations. Todd signaled that he saw it as well, and we stopped. Kicking myself over to it, the narrow beam cast itself on the object. The eerie silence was broken only by the soft, rhythmic beat of our exhales as they bubbled to the roof of the tunnel. The glint revealed itself to be a scuba tank half buried in the silt. Many divers bring along a spare for a safety rig. Last thing you want when you're 100 feet down enclosed by a rock ceiling is to run out of air, but who would leave it behind? We clipped it off to our line with the intention of taking it back with us when we made the return trip. Delving deeper into the system, we came across our first fork. Todd signaled me. He was asking which way I thought we should go. My light panned back and forth between the two tunnels. It was smothered by the abysmal nothingness no more than 10 feet ahead. The ever-present pressure continued to squeeze like a python coiling around its prey. It was oppressive. I felt a slight current brush the cold, dark water across my skin. It came from the left tunnel, and I gestured to the left, and we continued our exploration. We were 110 feet deep here. Even as an experienced diver, the pressure became taxing. Several kick paces in, something caught the focus beam of my light. It was unnatural. It stuck out like a sore thumb among the rocky stalagmites within my narrow beam of vision. I gracefully kicked over to it, careful not to stir the silt at the bottom of the cave floor. Once stirred, silt takes a considerable amount of time before settling again. More time than air tanks afforded us, sadly. If I thought my vision was limited before, a silt storm would mean complete and total blindness. Reaching my point of fixation, I settled and focused upon the thing that had caught my eye. Pulling it from its sunken place, I found it to be a diver's slate. Divers can't communicate verbally underwater, so what can normally be signaled and recognized through hand motions, divers instead will write on slate and pass to one another. Shining my narrow beam onto its surface, I made out hastily written words. Size refrigerator, smooth black skin, dolphin-like, some humanoid features, opposable thumbs, question mark? Chilled, I passed the slate to Todd, who read it, and after glancing worriedly at me, tucked it in his gear pouch. We pressed forward, and as we neared the end of the tunnel, the walls began narrowing until they pressed against my shoulders. At one point, it became so narrow I had to remove my tank and pass it through the opening before slithering through myself. For a brief moment, I became stuck. The familiar panic set in, and I took several slow breaths to calm myself, then exhaled every bit of air in my lungs and managed to become just slender enough to push myself through the other side. On the other side of this obstacle, the system opened up and we found ourselves in a ledge that dropped off into a large chamber. Shining my light around the perimeter, I noted horizontal boundaries. Turning my narrow beam down towards what should have been the floor of the chamber, my light was snuffed out by the overwhelming blackness. To this day, I have no idea how impossibly deep it could have stretched. I settled down to the bottom of the ledge and peered over the edge. The moment my knees touched the sand, I realized my right knee was landing on something hard. I reached into the sand and grabbed it and pulled it from its burial place. It was a video camera. Clearly a high-end one, too. Whoever made it this far must have wanted to document their expedition. Fumbling with the buttons, I switched it on and positioned my light on the playback scene so I could see the last recorded video. The video started and I recognized the side of the obstacle we had just pressed our way through. The frame reached the end of the ledge we now found ourselves on and then began pounding around the room. It's eerie to watch a video underwater with sound. It had all the effect of a silent horror film. The deja vu sense I had seen the surroundings that I was currently in didn't put me at ease. Then the frame panned down to the bottom of the cavern and back up from the abyss to the rest on the figure of a diver positioned next to the cameraman. Clearly it was the dive buddy of whoever was shooting. The diver in the frame looked towards the camera when suddenly a dark figure shot across the frame and out of view. The first diver appeared just as he was moments before. Then he clutched his throat. He clasped both of his hands to his neck as if he was choking. Then wisps of dark red blood stretched out from his grip, like malevolent fingers spreading their reach across the dark water. The figure rocketed into frame again from a new direction and out of sight. The diver's mask and regulator was gone now, and so was a large, haphazardly torn portion of his face. The camera frame shook in obvious shock as blood swirled violently, dyeing the water in view. The still twitching body floated limply forward until the figure rocketed again, and it was gone, dragged down into the black. The frame peered over the ledge until it was smacked violently and the screen turned black. Out of the silent nothingness, a roar exploded into being. Startled, I dropped the camera. To my left, Todd, in a clear panicked motion, said to go back the way we came. Kicking with all my might, I made it back to the narrow passageway and began the arduous task of shoving myself through. Barely getting through the obstacle once again, I turned to help Todd. He passed through his tank and he fit his head, then his shoulders through in a panicked hurry. His body filled up the entirety of the passageway and I could only see his head poking out of the rocks. But before he could gain any more ground, his head jerked in a sickening way. Bubbles exploded from his regulator as he screamed in pain, and blood seeped through the opening and began staining the water red around us. Helplessly, I tried to tug him through, but as I pulled, something began pulling back the other way. Todd's regulator flooded the chamber with purged air bubbles as a scream of pain propelled them violently towards the roof of the tunnel. The regulator dropped from his mouth and his head dropped lifelessly down. Horrified, I realized whatever that godforsaken was that was on the other side, the lifeless corpse of my friend, was the only thing barring it from pursuing me. The aquatic roar sounded loudly as more blood poured into the side of the obstacle. I realized this is my chance. It's with shame I admit that I left my friend there so I could have more time to escape. My heart pounded as I swam with all my might to the mouth of the cave system, and foolishly I made an emergency ascent to the surface, not stopping to decompress. It was worth the risk of the bends, just get the hell out of the water. It's been more than a month since then. I finally recovered from the bends after spending whatever in a hyperbaric chamber. I can no longer bear the thought of swimming, let alone diving, and I can't even explain why. All the proof I had of that wretched thing is buried in the cave with the body of my friend. I couldn't keep this post to myself. I can barely cling to my sanity as it is. I had to tell someone, somehow, so I will post it here. Hopefully this will be a warning to all those seeking the mysteries of the deep. The Google algorithm has been acting up lately. It has been giving me some very strange recommendations. Usually it's right on the money and sometimes predicts things that I want before I even have mentioned them out loud, and I wonder how it works. Is it reading my mind, or does it just know me better than I know myself? For instance, recently I was thinking about replacing my laptop. The old one was starting to malfunction and was slowing down to the point of being irritating. Sure enough, ads for laptops started appearing at the side window of my browser when I visited various websites, even though I hadn't mentioned the problem to anyone and hadn't even said it out loud that the old laptop was bothering me. Again and again, ads began to show up that catered to my very needs, getting more and more creepily specific. A hole ripped in my underwear and an ad for underwear popped up in my Google phone. I broke a coffee mug and ads for coffee mugs started to show up. I didn't even have to think about stuff for a while. It popped up on my feed before I even knew that I wanted it. I tried not to give in to these temptations, but I couldn't help myself. The ads were too perfect. It was everything I needed at the click of the button. It didn't matter that I had a shopping addiction once upon a time. This brought it all back. The bills began to pile up as my online shopping became a real problem for my wife and I financially. I started seeing the looks of disgust and annoyance on her face when she talked to me, and I realized I was ruining our marriage with my constant needs for these perfect new things, which were clearly meant so specifically just for me. But to be honest, it wasn't just that. There were problems long before that. The buying habit was just an escape, I had begun to realize. Still, I couldn't let her take that from me. She began to want to cut up my credit card and wanted to cancel it, but I told her no. Then, very soon after that, new ads started to appear when I was browsing on the laptop. Ads for shovels, for lye, for dark clothing, flashlights, spades, pickaxe, grass seed. Strange, I thought at first, since we didn't even live in a house with a backyard. Why was it making such odd recommendations all of a sudden? Looking at the laptop more closely, I realized why the algorithm had my desires wrong suddenly. It wasn't synced to my Google account, it was logged into my wife's profile. But why would she buy those items? Gardening tools don't make a lot of sense when you don't have a garden or a yard. I opened up the history tab, going back and seeing what she'd been looking at, but strangely, the last 24 hours were white blank. She was still out at the grocery store, so I pulled up the bank statements and her credit card account, overwhelmed with the desire to find the truth. Like an itch in my mind that I couldn't help but scratch. When I logged into my Google account and tried to follow the money as they said in the movies, I couldn't help but notice new ads dominating the borders of my computer screen. Learn self-defense now. Put on these new Nike running shoes and go outside. Go. And then finally, Bob's Gun Store. You can't put a price on safety. The last one was nearby, so I decided to quit browsing the internet and get out of the house. After all, the only thing I could find in our bank and credit card history was a big cash withdrawal the day prior. It hadn't been me, so only my wife could have taken the money out, but why? Part of me wasn't surprised when I saw her car parked out of the gun store. She was so transfixed by her new purchase that she didn't even notice me as I drove past, gawking at her. She was holding a large pistol and stroking it thoughtfully. Christine always said she hated guns, and I guessed maybe she had changed her mind. I drove for a long time after that, more afraid than I'd ever felt in my entire life, terrified of the woman I married. A couple hours outside the city, my phone started to ring. I pulled over on the gravel shoulder and fished my Google Pixel out of my back pocket with my shaking hands. Looking at the screen, it was a video call from Christine. She was wondering where I was. Swiping up on the screen, I saw her face appear, and seeing it made me feel like I had been wrong about everything. Like it had been a big mistake, and she'd never do anything to hurt me. "Hey, where are you? Are you driving?" I asked, seeing the background of her video call, and she looked to be on a country road. "Yeah, of course. I was worried sick about you. I pulled up your GPS data on your phone because you didn't come home for dinner. Where are you going?" Of course I'd forgotten about that. She knew my passwords and could track my phone. "Tell him to stay where he is," a man's voice said in the background. "Stay where you are. I'm coming to get you." She was coming to get me, all right. Christine, whose voice was that? The call suddenly cut out as her stunned face seemed unable to come up with a response for my question. I'm browsing my phone now, looking for a motel where I can spend the night, and the prompted ones keep popping up for a place in Mexico. I think maybe I should listen to Google this time. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed, please press the like button. Let me know in the comment section what you thought. Links to the two, stories where I found them on Reddit will be in the description down below at the top, so check those out. And yeah, if you enjoyed, subscribe, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. Hopefully I'll see you guys next time. Don't get anyone pregnant. If you do, make sure they're hot. I'm out. Peace.